Hey guys, so I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a giant Gilmore Girls fan. I'm so excited for the revival. I'm rewatching Gilmore Girls at the moment. I'm up to season 5, I think. So I've still got a little bit of time to get through to the end of season 7 before the revival comes out in November. Super excited about that. So if you guys are fans of Gilmore Girls as well, you probably know what I'm talking about, but Rory Gilmore is obviously like an idol to me. She's huge into reading, she was a really good student, all that kind of thing. So she was always a character that I really looked up to, and I think I was around like 12 years old or something when I first started watching Gilmore Girls, and yeah, I just really identified with Rory as a character. I'll try and link one down below, but people would write lists of all the books that Rory Gilmore read throughout the series. So yeah, they've made like Rory reading lists kind of thing. So I have one here that I printed out when I was around 13 or 14 years old, maybe, probably 14. But yeah, I've had this for a really long time and I still haven't worked my way through the entire list. I want to one day. That's like kind of on my bucket list, you know. But there's a lot of amazing books on here, and I did work my way through some of them, and then kind of like every year or so I'll find this list floating around in my room again and kind of like go through and see if I've read any more of the books. When I first printed it out, I was actively like seeking to read these books specifically. Like I would go to the library, and I don't know if you can see there's some like library code numbers and stuff like that on it from when I would take this into the library with me and just search the books on the database. So I found some really amazing favourite books through this list, and I just wanted to share some of those with you today, so like give you recommendations of where to start with this list, and then I want to talk about the books that are definitely like on my TBR. There's a lot that I haven't heard of and don't have like a huge interest in reading, but I will at some point just because it's on this list, and from some of the other books that I've read and they've been amazing, I really trust this list a lot. So I think a lot of the books that get mentioned on Gilmore Girls are really good ones. There's a lot of classics obviously, but some literary fiction, some non-fiction, and some more like popular fiction as well, which is really cool. So yeah, there's a few on here that I did read and didn't particularly enjoy. There's also a few that apparently I have read but I have no memory of reading whatsoever. One of them's called How to Breathe Underwater. No memory of that. And also Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Apparently I've read that one, but I have no idea what that is or, you know, whatever. But I guess it was quite a long time ago and I was reading like a lot, so I don't remember all of them specifically. So I am unfortunately at some point going to have to reread some of these as well, because like I said, I just have no memory of them. But I just want to talk to you about some of my favourites. So the first one is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This is one of my all-time favourite books. Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime is a book written from the point of view of a boy with, I think he either has Asperger's or autism, I can't remember, but he's somewhere on the autism spectrum anyway, and it's from his point of view, so it's really interesting. And pretty much the premise of the story is that this kid's neighbour's dog gets killed in the front yard of the neighbour's house, and he decides that he's kind of going to be a detective and he's going to find out who killed the dog and why they did it. So that's pretty much the story that it follows, and it's really good. And it's just it's a little bit sad and stuff like that, but it's a really heartwarming kind of read as well, and actually like a lot of fun to read. So I 100% recommend that, and I think it's aimed at kids as well. Like it's more of like a middle grade kind of style of writing, so definitely recommend that one. It's so good. The second one is An American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I've talked about this one before because again it's one of my all-time favourite books, and one that I definitely probably would never have picked up if not for this list. I did kind of have an interest in reading classics before I started working my way through this list, but some, you know, they're just intimidating and you don't really know whether you want to read them or not. So yeah, An American Tragedy is so good. It kind of follows a guy who, I don't know when it was written, maybe it's like the 20s or something like that kind of time, and he is from a poor family and he's trying to work his way up in a world. He lands a job in a factory through an uncle of his and is trying to sort of work his way into a management level, and he has a thing with one of the factory girls and it all kind of goes downhill from there. So it's a really good book. There's some interesting points about criminal justice and that kind of thing, and yeah, it's quite slow paced, but not in a way that it's boring. Like it just keeps going, and then kind of before you know it, like so much has happened. It's so good. highly recommend that one. And then the next one is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I'm sure most of you would have already read this, or you would have seen the movie or heard of it at least by now, and it's a famous classic novel set in the 1920s. It's about a guy who moves to New York and gets in with this crowd, and they're kind of like crazy party animals, and there's kind of like this love story mystery thing going on in the background. And I don't really want to say much more than that because that's kind of, it's quite a short book and there's not much to it really, but it's really, really good and one of my favorites definitely. And I love the movie that Baz Luhrmann did, so good. So that's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I always feel bad because I remember Leonardo DiCaprio over the other guy who's kind of like the main character, but I can't even remember who the actor's name was. So yeah, but it's such a good movie. Even if you don't have any interest in reading the book because you're not really into classics or whatever, definitely recommend watching the movie at least. So then there's The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, who's one of my favourite authors and someone that I discovered through this list. He's a French author and has written The Three Musketeers as well, so very, very famous, writes really good adventure kind of stories that have a lot going on, and The Count of Monte Cristo just like completely blew my mind with the twists that would happen in the story. There were just so many amazing plot twists and it really kept me like on the edge of my seat kind of thing. And then the next one is 1984 by George Orwell. I'm sure I've mentioned this one as well. It's a dystopian where it was written in 1948, I believe, and it was about 1984 as in like looking into the future and imagining what it's going to be like, and there's a lot of surveillance and that kind of thing, so it's pretty much a dystopian. So if you're into dystopian, definitely recommend 1984. Then there's The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, another one of my all-time favorites. It's a classic as well, another kind of a short read, and it's very much just character driven. It's from the point of view of Holden Caulfield, who's a character you've probably heard of. He's basically a really whiny teenager, so some people hate this book, but I love it. I could identify with it quite well. I'm pretty sure most teenagers do at some point, and yeah, really, really good. And then the last one that I'm going to mention, although there were, like, I did have to cut this list down because I didn't want to make this video like an hour long, but there's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, another one of my all-time favorite books, and definitely something sort of unexpected. It starts off kind of with a feel like it's going to be about high society and, you know, social things and stuff, and I don't know, that's the kind of vibe it was giving me, but then it takes like a really dark turn. And it's just a really, really good book. I love it so much. Definitely recommend all of those that I've mentioned. And then I want to run through some of them that are on this list that are on my TBR. There's The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. This is the first one on this list, so it's one of the first ones that I wanted to get to, and I just hadn't been able to find it at the library and stuff. So yeah, I don't really know too much about that one, but I know that Mitch Albom is a really good author. So yes. Then we've got Emma, as well as Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I've read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but not Emma or Sense and Sensibility, so definitely want to read both of those. And then there's also Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have this one on my shelf, I'm pretty sure, and I think I started reading it when I was in high school, but I never finished it. Can't remember why. I do remember I enjoyed the start of it, and I remember quite clearly what the start of that novel was like, so I just need to finish that at some point. Then there's Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. That's a really, really hard name to pronounce, and I know a lot of people are going to pronounce it a lot better than I can, but I heard someone talking about this in a video the other day, and I can't remember who it was, and I can't actually remember what they said about it, but they said something about the plot, like what the book was about, and I actually never knew that about Crime and Punishment. The title and just knowing it's a really long book has always been really intimidating to me, and it just sounds boring. But then this person, I wish I could remember who it was, and I wish I could remember what they'd said about it, but someone like I did like a blurb thing about it in a video, and God, I can't remember what it was, but it sounded so good, like something really unexpected. So I definitely want to read that one ASAP. Like, I'll probably read that one before the end of the year because I'm really, really curious about it. Then there's also The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo. That obviously just a complete classic that everyone kind of knows the general story without having actually read it, so that's just one that I'd like to add to my list. Then there's On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Have always wanted to read that. And then also The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, because So that's pretty much it for this video. I just thought I would bring up the whole Rory's book list thing because I'm sure others of you have done this as well. I would love to know, not necessarily on this specific list because I have no idea where I got it from, but if any of you guys have any recommendations, I'll try and link a list down below and you can have a flick through it. Recommend me any of the books on the list that you've read and really loved, or any on the list that you're really curious to read, or if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, definitely let me know what you thought of them in the comments down below as well. So yes, so excited for the revival. This is kind of getting me amped up for it, as well as rewatching all of Gilmore Girls, and yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you in a couple days with my next one.